What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court. Happy Thursday. I want the weekend so bad. Anyway, enough of that. It is time today to talk about the Phoenix Suns. To me, one of the most interesting cases in the entire league, looking at where they came from versus where they're going to be heading in the future. I think there are a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of potential over in Phoenix. But first, before we talk about that, did you know that 90% of the people that watch my Pistons video are not subscribed to this channel? Well, I know. And you know what that makes me think? It makes me think you should subscribe. It is right down there. Just click that button, hit that bell, lets you know when I'm live. But anyway, let's get right into it. So Chris Paul, at the age of 36, was able to make it to his very first NBA Finals. After a multi-year career and many different stops throughout the league, he finally makes it to the NBA Finals after stopping in Phoenix, Arizona to play with the Phoenix Suns, a team that has been struggling for years ever since they lost Steve Nash to find the true player that could be at the helm and bring them to the promised land. And luckily, it came in the likes of Chris Paul, Devin Booker. Man, is Devin Booker good. Oh my gosh. I know we don't like to throw the Kobe Bryant comparisons out there because it's just not fair to Devin. It's not fair to Kobe. It's not fair to anybody. But listen, man, he is the closest as far as playing style and overall attitude that we've had to Kobe since. So at the end of the day, I don't think that's an insult. I think that is nothing but a compliment. But Devin Booker stood up this season. He ultimately became a superstar in this league. To have your very first playoff run end in a finals defeat, nonetheless making it to the finals on your first try, is something that is absolutely obscene. And the guy is only 24. Oh my gosh, he's my age. We're not going to dig into that because that would just make my counselor's job too hard. Ha ha ha. Anyway, Devin Booker at the age of 24 was able to carry his team to the NBA Finals and average 25 points on 48% shooting from the field. And on top of that, bringing in guys like Jay Crowder that was really able to help him make a difference. And to see DeAndre Ayton finally take the jump and become one of the best bigs in the league thanks to the help of Monty Williams and Chris Paul. Ultimately, they just ran into a Milwaukee Bucks team that was just too hot, was just too talented, and was just too difficult for them to face, especially if you really think about it. Of all the teams that were on that side of the bracket, man, is the Bucks probably the hardest for them. I mean, obviously, Brooklyn Nets when healthy, that is the toughest for everybody. But I mean, that team in Milwaukee was just a nightmare. I mean, with the physicality and the things that Giannis can do with his versatility and the way that he can attack the court, with everything about that team, it just made it insanely difficult for Phoenix. And ultimately, they did just look overmatched. But they are now in a situation where they are coming off of a surprise finals run, and they are no longer a surprise to everyone else in this league. They look like legitimate contenders, and I think at this point, it's not about can they do it again, it's will they do it again? With moves such as bringing back Chris Paul in a multi-year deal, signing Cameron Payne to a multi-year contract, and also bringing in the likes of JaVale McGee, Elfrid Payton, this team is poised to make another finals run. Or so they were until the Los Angeles Lakers ultimately were able to get Russell Westbrook to add alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Because now you have to look at this Phoenix Sun team and you have to feel a little perplexed as if they're just a piece away, which is funny because they just made it to the promised land and now they're a piece away, because the truth of the matter is you could almost even make the argument that they're 2 pieces away. Because even if you add another superstar player on this team and you're managing to keep Chris Paul and you're managing to keep Devin Booker and you're managing to keep DeAndre Ayton, it almost is just hard to argue in almost any scenario, depending on who that player is, that they can ultimately beat any of those teams, whether it be out in the West like the Los Angeles Lakers. If the Clippers are healthy, it's difficult to make a case that they can have a competitive series against them. You have Golden State coming back with a competitive roster for the first time in 2 years. Klay Thompson's going to be healthy. Steph Curry, if he's healthy and can play like he did last year, I wouldn't want to face them in any round of the playoffs. But then on top of that, you're looking at the Eastern Conference, and the East is the strongest that it's ever been. And so the thing about this finals that is so tragic and is something that could be a conversation going forward is that might have been Chris Paul's only chance at getting a ring. The only way that he could possibly go get a ring if it doesn't work in Phoenix is if he gets to play on a minimum on a team like Brooklyn or a team like the Lakers or insert any superpower in the NBA here, right? I mean, that's the only way. But that's not the Chris Paul way. This contract has him playing with Phoenix pretty much to the end of his career, especially with his good years remaining. The age of 36, Chris Paul playing in the league as long as he has, with as many miles on his body as there are, he only has a couple of good years left. So if I'm the Phoenix Suns, I am doing everything in my power to ultimately make a way so that they can actually contend in this NBA climate in the years to come. They need to trade for somebody and they need to make a move quick. But the question is, what assets do they have to trade? I mean, if you look at this roster up and down, you're going to want to hold on to the likes of a DeAndre Ayton. You're really going to want to hold on to Cameron Payne. You're going to want to hold on to a lot of these guys that ultimately made it possible for them to make it to the finals in the first place. And on top of that, what they really need, they need another scoring wing, right? They need a wing player that can try and if it's not matching the level of LeBron James or a Kevin Durant, at least they can add that dimension, right? Because once Chris Paul looked a little hobbled, once you realized that Devin Booker was going to get double teamed and he was struggling to shoot, this Phoenix team looked done. They looked overmatched. It just didn't look like it was going to be possible. So if you can add the likes of like a Brandon Ingram or someone to that caliber, I don't think that's likely. I don't think that's going to happen. But if you could, I think that would be something where you can actually look at Phoenix and say, okay, there's a better chance of them making this happen. But even then, even if they brought in Brandon Ingram with their current roster, I still couldn't definitively tell you that that's going to beat the Los Angeles Lakers. I know for a fact I don't think that could beat the Brooklyn Nets. And so even though you're the Phoenix Suns and you have to be excited and you have to be elated with what you just saw from your Phoenix Suns team, the fact that they went from the last team out at the NBA bubble, winning 9 straight, taking that as a special culture statement for your team and ultimately turning that into an NBA Finals run during one of the most unprecedented NBA seasons that we've ever had, that is special. But now you find yourself in this awkward situation where you are tied into this team now. You have pushed all of your chips in and you believe that this is the team that can get it done. But the question is, even if they do make it that far again, do they have enough to ultimately push them over the top? And the only thing that's going to answer that question is the growth of a guy like DeAndre Ayton. It's the growth of a guy like Mikal Bridges. It's a growth of the guy like Devin Booker. Because at the end of the day, Chris Paul can be that floor general and he can help them get back to where they need to go. But the thing is that he can't get you over that hump anymore. That is just not something you can realistically rely on. I mean, even in the playoff run that Chris Paul was healthy enough to manage to help get to the finals, even then he was playing through significant injuries. Even then his body was starting to break down on him. Now don't get me wrong, I think this Phoenix team is going to be very good, and I expect at the very least a Western Conference Finals appearance from them. I mean, you have the return of Devin Booker and Chris Paul and Jay Crowder, another year in that system. But on top of that, you bring in the likes of a JaVale McGee to play that backup center role that clearly is one of the things that costed them in the playoffs when they ultimately lost Dario Saric to that torn ACL. I think he's going to be an absolute factor on this team. On top of that, you still have the players such as Cameron Payne, Mikal Bridges. This team is deep, and I look at Cameron Johnson as well. If that player can continue to grow into the kind of abilities in the thing that we saw from him in the playoffs this past offseason, I think if any of these guys can step it up to that next level, that just makes this Phoenix Suns team that much scarier. If I'm a Phoenix Suns fan, I'm excited about the future that we have, but I'm also a little bit worried about what's to come because I have questions. There are genuine things that you have to look at, and if this doesn't work, who's to say that Devin Booker at some point down the line isn't going to want to ultimately get a change of scenery? But that's getting a little bit too ahead of myself, because ultimately this Phoenix Suns team does have the ability to contend. I just don't think that they're going to. And that's ultimately where I'm at, is with this Phoenix Suns team. I think unless they make a move at the trade deadline that ultimately helps put them over the hump and makes them that contender level, I think you're looking at this Phoenix Suns team, and right now they're going to struggle just to get out of the Western Conference. And that is something that could be very true going forward, especially with the deterioration of Chris Paul. But with that, those are just my thoughts, and I would love to know yours. What do you think of the Phoenix Suns? What do you think about where they're at as a franchise? What do you think about signing Chris Paul to that contract? And what do you think this team can do this offseason? I really love to know what your thoughts are about their future. But with that, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.